Hey, welcome back everybody. Alright, in this lesson we're going to kind of pick up where we left off the last lesson. We talked about manually entering keyframes to animate geometry. We're going to start looking at how we can animate procedurally using some other techniques inside of Houdini. So the first thing I want to look at is how we can use expressions inside parameters to go ahead and animate pieces of geometry here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to come up to my create shelf and I'm going to lay down a sphere and I'm going to dive into the sphere, and we have our sphere here with our parameters. We have our center parameters here, and I'm going to use these parameters and we can go ahead and input expressions right inside of our parameters here. So there's a couple different ways we can do that. I can go ahead and enter an expression right here in the parameter, or I can right click a specific parameter and go to expressions and edit expression, and it'll go ahead and pull up this expression box. Give us more room in case we have a big expression or some code that we want to go ahead and apply to our geometry here. So I'll just leave this open. Or actually, let's close this out. So if I come over to center, there's two different types of languages that we can use to create expressions here. One of these languages is what's called Hscript, and it's been around in Houdini for a long time, and it's used by entering a $sign, and then you can see we get a drop down of some different local variables we can use in here. So for instance, if I want to go ahead and use my frame, my current frame, I can say FF like this. And I hit enter. You notice it turns green just like when we enter a keyframe. And if I click on this, you can see the current frame 1, and if we look at our timeline, we're on 1, 2. So if I start incrementing this, you can see that sphere moving in the X direction because we're on the X-axis here, and it'll go ahead and correspond with my frame. So it'll keep updating this parameter with my frame using that $F. Okay. So if I click it again, I'll go back to the expression, and I can always apply some math to this expression. So if I kind of zoom out a little bit and say I want to slow this down, so I can always multiply this by a lower number, so maybe 0.1. Okay, and now if we go ahead and move this, I'm always going to have the real time toggle, so it's always 24 frames per second, so we always want to turn that on when we're dealing with animation in the timeline here. Now if I press play, you can see that that goes slower. Okay, and if I click this, you can see that our number is lower, so we're multiplying this by a smaller number here. Okay, and if I even want to go slower, I can do 0.01 and go ahead and hit play, and we can have a slower animation here. Okay, if I want to speed it up, obviously I put a bigger number in here and it'll go ahead and speed that up already. Okay, so that's just a one type of variable we can use. So that's Hscript. Another coding language inside of Houdini is called VEX, and VEX is really the way that Houdini wants to go with their expressions, with all their coding inside of Houdini. VEX basically makes up Houdini. It's built upon VEX. You'll use VEX a lot in different places in Houdini. But to use a VEX variable here, we start it with the @ sign, and then for frame, we say capital F and then frame here. So that works the same way. So again, if I start playing this, you can see that it'll go ahead and pick up that current frame as well. And I can always multiply this to slow it down or speed it up if I want. Okay. So to delete an expression, I can go right click, delete channel, and it'll go ahead and delete it. We can put this back to the default here. Okay. To look at some different expressions to kind of get you started, if you go to the help menu at the top and go to contents, you'll be brought to this window here, and you'll just have to search for expression cookbook. Okay, so if you type in expression, if you start typing expression, start typing cookbook, you can see that we have our expression cookbook here, and if you click it, it'll go ahead and bring it to this. And this is a great little resource because it'll tell you some things like Hscript and VEX, you know, different ways we can use different expressions in here. So for the current frame, we saw $FF, or we have that at frame. We have time, bounding box size, so forth and so on. We can take a look at this. And then if we come down here, we can see some actual expressions, maybe to get random numbers, so we can randomize a point number. For VEX, that's the at ptnum here. And then we have some more advanced ones if you go down here and take a look. So this is always a good place to start to play around with these different expressions and different parameters to see what you get. Because that's really what drives procedural animation, is creating these expressions, and you're letting that do the animation for you. Okay, so I just wanted to show you that. So for instance, we can do a real quick one here. So if I come to the viewport and I want to make this kind of spin in a circle, okay, so we can do that with a couple quick expressions. So on my center parameters here, if I go to the x axis here, I'm going to use the sine expression, and then I'm going to go ahead and put in at frame. Okay, and on my z channel, I'm going to do the cosine. I'm going to say at frame, enter. And if we go ahead and play, you can see that it's going to create a circle within our frame range here on our timeline. It's not going to create a whole circle. It's going to do best as it can with the frame here, but we can always speed this up. Okay, so if I come back to 1, I can always multiply inside, again, my frame rate by, say, 5. And I need to do this to both my expressions here. Okay, so now if I play this, you can see that that speeds that up, and we get a full circle animated. So we can slow that down, speed it up, and if I want to expand my circle or shrink it outside, I can multiply this by a number. So if I multiply that by 2 and multiply this by 2, you can see that it brings out my circle a little bit, and we get a bigger radius in our animated circle here. Okay, so that's just a quick couple expressions we can use to go ahead and animate using expressions. Again, check out those expression cookbook. Go into the help, look at how we can use expressions, the different variables that you can use inside. We're going to be going over these some more, but that's it for this one. We will go ahead and see you in the next one.